Good morning, everyone. I'm Edith Macker. I'm the Environment Director for the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, and I am filling in for our Environment Committee and Energy Subcommittee Chairman, Mayor Kevin Burns, today, who had a conflict come up. So he is sadly unable to attend, but sends his greetings, and he's very passionate about this topic, as am I. So I'm really glad to have all of you here. I do want to welcome some new members to the committee. We grow the committee regularly when we have participants, and sometimes we turn our speakers into committee members as we find new friends. So if you would rename yourself with your organization or put a hello in the chat, just so that our new members can get a chance to meet you. With such a large group, we don't often take time for introductions, and we miss that, sad about that. But if you can say hello via chat or by renaming yourself, it'd be a good way to get to know who's in the room. But we have a great representation from municipal leaders and advocates who are tied to municipalities, mostly through sustainability commissions throughout the region. So we're really proud of the diverse representation. We do include partners with other local government organizations beyond municipalities. And then we, of course, got an extended friends list from academia and activist groups. So glad to have you all in the room here today. And the topic, as you know, is transportation as climate action. And it's something that I've become very passionate about. We're seeing a real rise in understanding that promoting active transportation is effective climate action. Safe and comfortable access to transit and robust infrastructure for biking and walking reduces the number of vehicle miles traveled, which is a key objective of our climate action plan. It's one of two objectives in the climate action plan that are related to transportation. And transportation in our region is the second largest sector for emissions. It is the largest nationwide. So it's something that we know we can do a lot better on. And what I really love about transportation as climate action is that there's so much that's achievable and manageable and can be impactful for local governments to undertake in partnership and alone. In the past year, we've been having a lot of fun partnering with the Metropolitan Planning Council and Active Transportation Alliance to learn about the municipal capacity for active transportation and to understand opportunities and barriers. So we'll be learning about what we've done in the last year, and Audrey will be presenting what we've learned together, and then demonstrate one of the really exciting key products, a database. Also, we've learned that there are some confounding barriers to safe, accessible transportation, and we want to address those. We want to learn about two really important projects to address these barriers, both safety and accessibility. So we're glad to have quite a lineup of speakers. The last part of the agenda is going to be a dialogue, and in the digital life, that's going to be on Mentimeter. We will share a Menti code for you, and maybe we could do that in the chat just to make sure everybody has a chance to get that loaded onto their phones and participate. But first, we want you to pay attention to Audrey Wenning, who will be doing the first presentation with a demonstration of the bicycle and pedestrian database that was led by Metropolitan Planning Council with support from the Mayor's Caucus and Active Transportation Alliance. I will acknowledge our funder here. The three organizations have been working together, and we got a grant from the Elizabeth Morse Genius Trust, is what has been fueling this work. So Audrey will start to discuss the project, and its purpose was to understand municipal capacity for promoting active transportation. And as I said, she will be demonstrating the database. Audrey is not new to the committee. She's been an active member of our climate action plan, an active contributor to the climate action plan, particularly the transportation section, and has been on the environment committee for a long time, supporting our robust conversation in transportation. Audrey has a master's degree in urban planning and policy from University of Illinois. She is a master of the transit universe, and she's also a master knitter and often combines the two of them. So she makes knitting an art and makes it a mobile art as well. So with that, I'm going to let Audrey get us started.
Thank you so much, Edith. It's always a pleasure to be with this group, and it's been such a pleasure working with the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus over the past couple of years as you developed your climate action plan. incorporated lots of really great transportation strategies. We were so happy to be involved with the creation of that plan, and MPC helped with the launch of that plan. And we're just so proud of the region being such a rock star nationally and having such a high quality plan, and giving such great direction that can be taken at the municipal level. And over the past 2 years, we've been really just extremely pleased to be partnering with both Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus and the Active Transportation Alliance as we've taken on helping communities implement the plan. So as we all say in planning, plan's no good if it sits on the shelf. You have to actually do what's in the plan, and that's always easier said than done. And so we have, over the past 2 years, undertaken a number of strategies. So I'll first just give a quick review of some of the things we've done, and let you have information about how to access them. Last year, you may have seen us as we went out to the different councils of governments and chatted with leaders from communities to understand kind of where they were at in terms of implementation of bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. And we also did a series of events, our 3 organizations in partnership last year, to help with implementation. And my colleague, Hugo Coronado, is dropping some links into the chat. We had webinars about the value of developing an active transportation plan. So, why should you do that? The value of implementing a transit-oriented development plan. So creating one, why have one, and then implementing them. Also, we did a webinar in partnership with the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. And I know some folks are on the call today, and they're going to be talking separately about ADA transition plans. So this is making sure that your pedestrian networks are ADA accessible and why that's so important. And then we also did a 4th webinar on how to access bicycle and pedestrian project funding. And I know Maggie Sherwinski from Active Trans is going to talk a little bit about that today after I finish the demo of the last product that we want to share. So we did all those webinars. And then over the course of these conversations, we had the realization that, we really want to be tracking how people are implementing these strategies. And we wondered to ourselves, is there a place where we have documented all the plans in our region in active transportation? Is there one place you can go to see if you want to know which communities have a plan? Is there a place for that? And we realized there wasn't one. So we decided to create one. And that's what I'm going to demo today, is this bike and pedestrian database, which hopefully you can see on your screen right now. And so what we have here is 4 modules. This is all open to the public, and Hugo will drop the link into the chat as well. You can all access this now. It's up and running. And I'm going to just explore these 4 different modules with you and show you how it works, so that you can go use this tool yourself. So if we hit on the first one, which is about planning and policy, this is the largest category in terms of the number of different elements that are stored here. I'm just letting it boot up here. So we can see all the different elements. You can see there's a map. So we have different data sets that will map for you live right in the website. And then on the bottom here, where you can see me kind of scrolling up and down, there's also a whole data set. And so you can access the information various different ways. So I'm just going to walk through the different types of information here. You can click on and off the different layers on the left side. So these are the mappable data sets. This is most of what's in the data. but there's even more than that. So you can see we looked at comprehensive plans to determine whether they include a robust amount of bicycle and pedestrian content. Some do, some don't. You can see here in blue the ones that do have a robust amount of bicycle pedestrian content in their comprehensive plans. So then I will click that off, and then I'm going to highlight which communities in the region have an active transportation plan, a bicycle or pedestrian plan. And we saw that just over 1/4 of communities in the color blue, so 77 out of our 284 communities in this region have a bicycle pedestrian plan. So clearly there's a lot of room for everyone to get there, no matter how big or small, or how urban or rural community. The best thing you can do to know how to invest and how to make your network better is to develop a plan so you can see where your network is and where you have gaps and where you should be making investments. For the next item on this list is climate and sustainability plans. So we also looked at, of course, the region has the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus Climate Action Plan, but communities are developing some of their own climate action plans. And we took a look at which communities have those. So that's mapped here. There are 36 communities that have their own climate or sustainability plan. And then we also dug into those to see which communities actually looked at transportation as part of that. So that's a small club. So I'm clicking here on climate plan with mode shift targets. So those are the communities that actually isolate transportation and trying to shift people from driving to alternative and sustainable modes and reduce vehicle miles traveled. And so that's, that's really the next level that communities can go to. We also looked at which communities had complete streets policies. And a number do. That's a very important foundational element for building out bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure and having the right policies underlying your community. And then we also looked at which communities have a transit-oriented development plan. Not every community has a metro station, we realize, but we also did a little bit of analysis to see that how many communities that do have a metro station have plans. 82 out of 113 municipalities with at least one metro station have a TOD plan. So those are also shown in blue. And then the last thing I'll highlight is the bicycle or pedestrian transportation committee. You can see that's also a fairly small club. Blue is a transportation commission or committee. Green is a bicycle commission or committee at the municipal level. And then there's a few that are in dark royal blue where they have both. And this is something that we've heard, and maybe we'll even talk about today a little bit when we are having our discussion, the role that a commission can play in terms of really elevating these issues, being advisors to leadership in the community in developing infrastructure, and trying to really accelerate having a complete active transportation network. And then actually the very last one I'll show is just ADA transition plans. Only 30 communities in our region have ADA transition plans. And I know we're gonna have a little more conversation about that today. CMAP, who's also here, is doing a lot of work providing support to municipalities. So definitely check out CMAP's website. There's a lot of support and technical assistance to get all communities to have ADA transition plans, which they're supposed to have per the Americans with Disabilities Act. So that is what we have in this data set. And then I'll just also show you, there is a whole spreadsheet below, and you can look at all the data. You can sort the data here. sort ascending, descending. So if you want to see who has a yes, to sort descending, and the yeses will come up first. And then you can also export all to CSV. So you can just click this, and a CSV file that you can open in Excel will pop out, and then you can manipulate all this data. There are links here. Whenever there's a plan, we have links to all the plans. So you can just come here for a one-stop shop to access other communities' plans. If you're thinking about writing an RFP and you want examples of what are in other communities' plans, this is a great place. If you want to see what your neighbors are doing, this is a great place for you to come to find out, to find plans and find information. So I'm closing that out. I'm just going to more quickly go through the other elements of this plan. So a big piece of developing bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure is, of course, being able to fund it. And we decided to do an analysis of the major funding programs. You can see here on the top, the Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program. That's a state program through the state DOT, the Surface Transportation Program that goes through, it's federal money that comes through CMAP that then goes through the Councils of Governments. We also have the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Program, which is federal money that is distributed through CMAP by discretionary grants. You can apply grant applications. The Transportation Alternatives Program, similar federal money that goes through CMAP and is through a grant process. And then Safe Routes to Schools, which is actually through the state, and that's federal money. And so we wanted to see who's having success in our region accessing these programs, who is getting grant funds, and who is not. So if we look here, everything was checked off. I'm going to uncheck some stuff. And you can see at the top total grants. So dark represents the most grants. So you can see, Chicago, no surprise, it's gotten a lot of grants. And then we can see some other communities that have been successful in getting bicycle and pedestrian grants. And then if we want to look at individual areas, we can see who in the past approximately 13 years, we've looked since about 2010, who has been successful in getting ITEP grants. And these are the state grants. And that money would doubled a few years ago. So there's a lot of resources. If you see that your community hasn't gotten any, or maybe hasn't tried, there may be ways to get assistance. I know CMAP has a lot of technical assistance, and Active Transportation has a lot of assistance, and MPC is always trying to be helpful as well. So take a look at, how's everyone else doing, who's getting grants, and if you're not getting grants, maybe you can find some assistance to figure out how you can be more successful in getting grants. And this is also a function of, do you have an active transportation plan that is telling you what your next investments need to be so that you can define the projects, and then you can actually apply to get the money. It's all a continuum. And so just similarly, there's a whole spreadsheet here where you can see the number of grants, the total grant funding. Maybe there's some peer communities that are doing really well and you want to have an interview with them and just talk to them and say, hey, what are you doing? How are you being so successful at this? So there's a lot of information sharing that can go on. And then the last two are, I'm just going to quickly go through the sidewalk coverage. This is data that CMAP collected. Maybe it's now 5 years old. CMAP looked at aerial photography in this region and determined whether communities had sidewalks on one side or both sides of their road network, and the total percentage of the community that has sidewalks. And so you can see here, darker is more. You can see the percentage of the roadway network that has sidewalks, obviously excluding highways where you shouldn't have sidewalks. This shows the completeness of the pedestrian network. And I know CMAP is looking at different ways to update that data, but it's a good bellwether for how complete your pedestrian network is. And then lastly, I just want to show you that we also added, based on feedback that we got from communities, we didn't have this at the beginning, but we've added it. county plans. So because the counties do a lot of great stuff as well as the councils of governments. So they have an overarching view of planning, and they are planning for roads there certainly that they own and they control. So we can see by county, you can see whether they all have transportation plans, and most of them have bicycle and pedestrian plans. You can see what year that plan was, and you can also access those plans. When you click view, you can go right to the link to the plan. And then you can see here at the bottom, there's some of the COGs have either comprehensive plans or a bike ped plan or complete streets plan. And so those are here too. And we want to encourage you, you see here at the bottom, if there's anything missing or you see anything incomplete, there's an email here to Hugo, who's on the call today. So please just email us if you feel like once you go into this data and if you see anything that's incomplete, please communicate with us, and we will update it. And the goal long-term is to actually have CMAP take over ownership of this database and have sort of a shared ownership, so that we can be having this be very up-to-date and be updated on an ongoing basis. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And I think we can take, I'm not sure if there's a time for any questions or if we just need to keep going, or if we can take questions at the end.
I'll defer that to you, Audrey, depending on how the Menti discussion goes at the end. We've got 30 minutes for discussion, but I guess we could take a question or two if anyone has a comment or question.
I have a question. I was just curious if there's examples of sort of like combined plans. For example, I think in Northbrook, we don't have the complete streets policy or an ADA transition plan. So I was wondering if there's any examples or if you know of ways that we can sort of like collaborate those two efforts to sort of avoid any like duplicative work.
So are you saying that you would want to do those plans, like have multiple municipalities do a plan together?
Well, I'm just saying I could see there could be similarities between an ADA transition and a complete streets policy. So do they ever happen at the same time?
That's a great point. I don't think we have examples of a combined one, but I know that, let's see, I'm looking, is Yohai and Lindsay, Yohai from the ADA Transition Great Lakes ADA Center, I think is on the call, as well as Lindsay Bailey. So I'm going to see if any of those other folks have heard of examples. I don't know of one right now, but it's a great question, and it would be an efficient thing. So we'll make a note of it at MPC and see if we locate any, and we could get back to you. Tessa.
Thank you.
I'm not aware of any either.
Yeah, Tessa, I'm not aware of any, but I have heard of so St. Charles was working on a active transportation plan, and at the same time they had the consultant create a complete streets policy for them. So sometimes you can ask your consultant to add things into your contract to do multiple plans or policies at once. But with TOD specifically, I don't know of any examples either.
Time for one more question. Mavis, Mavis, you've got your hand up.
Okay, thanks. Would there be funding here for sidewalks? Is that why you're asking about sidewalks? Do you have funding possibilities for sidewalks?
Yeah, so the grant programs that we talked about are for pedestrian or bicycle projects. Theoretically, yes, those grant programs could cover pedestrian infrastructure. Safe routes to schools also, those types of grant programs can cover pedestrian infrastructure. That said, many municipalities do also fund sidewalks out of their own transportation resources, the motor fuel tax and the resources they do get. So there are various funding sources that can be available. And I don't know, Maggie, if you have any other points you want to make. No. Okay. Yeah, but we're not announcing like a brand new sidewalk funding program, but we're highlighting some of the ones that do exist, and also encouraging communities to see how important sidewalks are, and that they are a core part of the transportation network, and that we should not view them as the kind of thing that we do our roads first and then, you know, we only get to them if we have any money left over. We really want people to see how central they are to the whole transportation network, and that they should be prioritized as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thanks. Okay.
Sounds like it. Thank you so much, Audrey. That was, I for one, am really excited about the database. And when we started the project, we really had a question about how much is out there and how much our municipalities doing. And although there's room to grow in some of those numbers, I think it's really impressive, the level of community engagement. So if you are on that map, take a look at yourself on the database and take a bow, because that's great work from our communities across active transportation planning. And a good transition here, questions about funding. Our funding expert is Maggie Cherwinski. She has been the third leg of the stool on this climate action, active transportation's climate action project. She is the advocacy manager for Active Transportation Alliance, and she has a combined presentation for us both on, very briefly, on securing funding for walking, biking, and trail projects. And then she's going to introduce the statewide active transportation planning process and give us tips on how to get engaged. Not only does she have knowledge of this funding, she has an incredible vocabulary for the funding acronyms, which she'll define for you. Maggie has 2 master's degrees, one in environmental studies from Lund University in Sweden, and one in urban planning from University of Virginia. She earned a bachelor's degree in statistics from U of M. And see if she has her camera on there. Oh, you can't see the ribbon over her shoulder. Not only does Maggie have a new baby, she has an award-winning 4-legged baby, which is what the ribbon over her shoulder is about. Edgar's a proud student. So turn it over to you, Maggie.
Thanks, Edith. Hopefully you can see the ribbon now. So thank you all. I'm Maggie Cherwinski from the Active Transportation Alliance, and it's been a lot of fun working with Edith and Audrey over the last couple of years. So it's been a great team, and we're excited to just make sure to get you all the resources and support we're able to get you all to help improve walking, biking, transit in our region. So a few upcoming grant opportunities to flag. One is, it's called the Communities Connector Grant, and it's actually several organizations have come together to offer this grant. It's Smart Growth America, it's America Walks, it's Equitable Cities, and a few others. The deadline is July 27th, and this is for small to medium-sized cities, so I think up to 500,000 population, and it's a capacity building grants for technical assistance to help with projects that could remove a highway or make a dangerous arterial. And we know a lot of arterials go through a lot of your communities, so to make that arterial safer for people to cross. And it can also help you, this particular grant can help support helping you apply for a federal grant, which I'll talk about in a moment. But another upcoming grant that's due July 31st is Rails to Trails Conservancy. They have a trails grant, and this grant it's focused on building trail networks. It's again more of a technical assistance grant for trail visioning, for building a coalition, for community engagement, for securing funding and other strategies. So it's kind of helping you get to actually the step of getting money to build the trail. And then this Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhood grant, the third one on the list. This is a federal grant. It's a new program. Deadline is September 28th. And it's actually it's a program that combines 2 grants. It's this Neighborhood Access and Equity Grant and this Reconnecting Communities pilot program. And these projects for this particular program are about focusing on just connecting people to everyday needs like jobs, school, health care, food, and then as well as projects that mitigate highways or other facilities like arterials that have created barriers to mobility and access. So it's a huge grant program. So we're hoping to see a handful of communities in our region apply for this program this year. In addition, also due on September 28th is this rural and tribal assistance pilot program. So it's about improving transportation and infrastructure in rural and tribal areas. There's no local match required for this one. The other grants, I think it's the match is variable depending on the resources in your community and the needs. And then finally on this list, the Safe Routes to School grant program. This has a deadline of October 2nd, and this is all about connecting students, kids to their school. It can be for sidewalks, bike lanes, crosswalks, and this is 100% funding as well, so no local match required for anyone. I'll speak about that more in a moment because we're organizing some webinars to help you apply for that funding. And then just so it's on your mind, we're trying to just keep up. There's a lot of federal grant money for active transportation projects coming right now and coming up. So we're just trying to keep an eye on it. And there is going to be a transit-oriented development pilot program coming later this summer, fall, as well as an active transportation infrastructure investment program. So we'll try to keep you updated once we find out more about those. And then I'm gonna go to my next slide. So a few other just alerts. So IDOT, Illinois Department of Transportation, this past spring, they posted this special programs assistance conference, and it's all about providing one-on-one assistance as well as just an overview of the ITEP program, which is all about funding walking, biking, trail projects in our state. The Safe Routes to School program, which I just spoke about, and that's for K through 12. So elementary, middle school, high schools, within a 2-mile radius of those schools. And then an economic development programs grant, which you can also use for like streetscaping or just improving walkability, bikeability. So they were on tour all over the state, and they're going to be in Broadview July 26th and 27th. So they just added this conference. So it's a great opportunity to get some one-on-one support, and they're very helpful. John Paris is one of the IDOT staff members that we work pretty closely with, and he'll be there. So if you're planning on applying for any of those grants, I recommend checking out that conference in Broadview. And also we teamed up with IDOT and Illinois Public Health Institute to offer a Safe Routes to School webinar series. We had our first webinar last week to give you an overview of the grant and all the new opportunities. This year it's funding both infrastructure projects and non-infrastructure projects. So programs like educational programs or crossing guard trainings, things like that. And we're doing some Q&A with IDOT August 23rd and September 20th. And then another heads up, CMAP has a local technical assistance program that's coming in 2024. And with that, you could apply to get assistance putting a bike ped active transportation plan together if you don't have one, or if you need to get yours updated. And then finally, we have a listserv, the Chicagoland Complete Streets listserv, where I try to send out grant alerts. So if you want to be on that list, you can email me, Maggie@activetrans.org. And then I briefly wanted to just make sure you're all aware of IDOT's active transportation plan. So it's called Walk, Roll, Illinois. So they're developing a statewide plan to improve walking, biking, and rolling across the state. And this is previously in 2014, we had a bike plan. So this is an update to include all modes of active transportation. And we really need to get the word out about this so that we're getting community members, partners, cities, villages sharing with IDOT what the issues are, so that those are potentially addressed in the plan. And they're reviewing existing conditions right now. They're planning to do more community engagement, having some in-person meetings in the fall. There's going to be policy and program recommendations, as well as guidance on implementation for both the state, for municipalities, for MPOs. Here's the schedule. It started earlier this year. There's been some stakeholder meetings, and right now they're collecting, there's a public survey open, as well as a map that they're trying to get the word spread about. And they're going to wrap that up beginning of August. So we really only have like a couple more weeks to spread the word. So I encourage you all to, if you have a community newsletter, email on your website, social media, spread the word. We'll make sure to get you the link to the survey. And then later this fall, there will be more development of the recommendations, policies, programs, design, as well as more stakeholder meetings. And then next year, another round of public feedback. And then the plan will be wrapping up at the end or middle or end of 2024. And then this is, I just wanted to show you all, this is their current vision statement for the plan. So I believe they're taking feedback on this. So it's the vision is to provide a safe, equitable, context sensitive, multimodal transportation network. And here are some goals. Right now it's focused on equity, safety, connectivity, partnerships. And again, they're taking feedback, but I feel like some things that are missing here, health is missing, environment is missing, which I feel like a lot of you are probably attuned to, like thinking about greenhouse gas emission reduction. So I think sharing your thoughts and feedback with IDOT directly could make a difference and help improve the plan. And then this is just some more information about what they're up to right now. Just there's a survey, there's an interactive map, there's a meeting in a box, so you could actually present more details about the plan with others in your community. So that is all I have. I'll put a link to the plan in the chat, but I'll turn it back over to Edith.
Thank you, Maggie. That is great info, and I'm really excited to I hope all of you comment on the plan. That looks like a really great opportunity for engagement. And to those of you, especially that are new on the committee, we do share all of the slides. We post this on the Environment Committee website, and if Cheryl would drop that link in there. So if you're wondering about all that great information, you didn't get it jotted down, we'll have it for you. Next, I am really glad to welcome Devin Snyder here, who's project coordinator for Project Sidewalk at UIC's Department of Disability and Human Development. She's the project coordinator for the Project Sidewalk. She has a master's in urban planning from University of Illinois with a focus on environmental planning. And like many of our speakers today, she's an avid cyclist and active transportation advocate. She also volunteers with a community bike shop in her spare time. And she'll talk about Project Sidewalk. It's a crowd and AI tool to map, analyze, and visualize sidewalk accessibility. Welcome, Devin.
Morning, everyone. Let me just pop over and share my screen with the presentation. And everyone can see the slideshow loading here in a second. Please feel free to let me know if for some reason there's any technical issues, but
looks good.
Okay, great. Morning, everyone. My name is Devin Snyder, and I'll be leading us through a brief presentation on Project Sidewalk, show you a little bit about what the tool looks like and kind of the background on the project and where we're hoping to take it. So a little bit of background on the tool and the kind of research around it with the Department of Disability and Human Development. And this is a report probably familiar to a lot of folks, including folks from MPC and other folks around the region. The department and the ADA Great Lakes Center worked on this report a couple of years ago on ADA transition plans, getting an idea of nationally what the status of those plans looked like, as well as around the region, and found that not only are there a lot of plans missing from municipalities, only 13% nationally, municipalities that were studied had plans, and regionally about 11% at the time of the study, but there are a lot of reasons why those plans weren't in development. And kind of the main component that was found with those municipalities is a lack of data. So the kind of background on this project is trying to find ways to collect data necessary for planning. And again, ADA transition plans are kind of that standard that we're looking for. As Audrey showed in beginning of the presentation, there's a lot of gaps missing regionally as well as nationally, but the data collected for ADA transition plans can also support a number of different planning initiatives, including complete streets, pedestrian planning. We worked with folks that are interested in using it as part of their kind of environmental planning effort. Again, I'm sure this committee knows there's a lot of good that can come from getting a sense of sidewalk conditions, existing conditions. But again, we're keeping that eye towards ADA transition plans as that standard because it is required and it can do a lot of good. But again, we found that with the municipalities, there were a lot of barriers to collecting the data that is needed for those planning efforts. You know, it's labor intensive, it's expensive, it can be conducted infrequently. There's a lot of lack of transparency involved. It takes a lot of resources, a lot of people power. So we're trying to find alternatives to that more traditional on the ground auditing. And in general, who this helps, you know, I mean, I like to think about like the rising tide raises all ships. Like improving sidewalk connectivity and accessibility has a lot of benefits for everyone that wants to access, you know, work, public transportation, local business. But the goal is to kind of center accessibility in this conversation because oftentimes that is not really framed in a lot of planning efforts. And including those voices is really helpful, not only to get a better sense of current conditions, but also how to improve safety going forward. And generally speaking, improving sidewalks, again, has a lot of additional benefits, not just for like public access to resources, but also economic benefits as well. There's a loss that happens when people can't access local businesses or participate in community events. So there's a lot of benefit to it, not just from like the people side of things, but also from the city side of things as well. So background on this project a little bit more is that this is coming from the National Science Foundation. It's a Smart and Connected City Communities grant that we're working underneath, and we're partnering with folks out in the University of Washington on this project. They're the ones that developed the Project Sidewalk tool. So some of our team members, so coming from UIC, as well as University of Washington out in Seattle and Easter Seals. And we have lots of regional partners, many of whom are on this call and folks that I've worked with as well. So we're working with planning agencies, transportation agencies, and local centers for independent living on this effort. So a little more detail on what Project Sidewalk is. So it's a free online tool that allows folks to remotely label and assess sidewalk features and problems. And I'll drop links to the site as well as to the reports that were included earlier in this presentation in the chat afterwards. So if folks are familiar with Google Street View, and we'll have a little preview of what that looks like here in a little bit, it allows folks to drop into Google Street View and do some labeling missions to assess sidewalk conditions. It's a crowdsourced approach to data collection, so hopefully trying to avoid a lot of those barriers that I talked about earlier in the presentation when it comes to the difficulties of on-site auditing. Working with groups, so working with volunteers, trained community members, as well as trained interns and city officials on this work. And it's a data collection tool, but also it's a great education tool. It's a great tool to motivate civic engagement and participation. Again, trying to center voices that are oftentimes left out of the planning conversation, give them a little bit more agency in that process to provide feedback, not only when it comes to collecting qualitative data, quantitative data, but also having discussions as well about their lived experience navigating the sidewalk. Again, it supports improved planning efforts, as well as data analysis and community development. And the benefits of the tool are, we're hoping to fill gaps in data that exists. So not all municipalities have a full inventory of their sidewalk. Maybe they have an inventory that's a little bit outdated. So trying to fill those gaps in and update that inventory as well. And again, trying to address those resource limitations I talked about earlier. And the benefit of the tool is that it's open source data. It's free to use, and it can be combined with other forms of data that municipalities might already have, aerial data, community feedback, 311 reports, etc. So a little more detail about what the tool is looking for. I kind of talked about features and problems. That's kind of how I frame it. There's like the aspects of the pedestrian environment that we rely on, like curb ramps, crosswalks, pedestrian signals. Those are all things that help with pedestrian safety and access. And then there's the issues that might impede someone's travel down that route. So obstacles in the path, surface problems, and a lack of those features. So a missing curb ramp or a missing sidewalk. So these are the labels that folks are going to be looking at within the tool. And within each label, there's a little bit more detailed level of review. So folks are asked to provide a little bit of a tag description to whatever they're looking at. So in this case, this is an obstacle tag or an obstacle label with some tags. If you could see there on the left side, fire hydrant pole, trying to get a little bit more of a deeper understanding of what the user is encountering. And then the user's also asked to rate on a scale of 1 to 5, how passable or how much of it an obstruction or difficulty that problem is. So if it's a 1, maybe it's a trash can that's not taking up the entire sidewalk and it's easy to move and probably temporary, versus something that's like a 5, which you can kind of see that middle top image of that fire hydrant. If you were in a mobility device, wheelchair, using a walker, even if you had maybe a companion helping you down the sidewalk, it makes it pretty difficult to pass. And then with the curb ramps and other features, also rated on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being great curb ramp, has a tactile warning, no overgrowth of grass, nothing like that. And a 5 being there's a curb ramp there, but it's missing a lot of those features and maybe needs a little bit of repair. And there's 2 types of missions within Project Sidewalk. There's the labeling missions that I've been talking about. So again, folks assess Google Street View imagery, looking for those label types. And then there's also the validation mission. So that allows users to look at other users' labels and confirm whether or not that's the correct label place. So that adds a level of review and quality control into the process as well, to make sure that the data that's being produced is accurate. And it's also a great learning tool for the users. So this is a brief video of what it looks like to use the tool. And I'm going to turn the sound off because it's kind of like a funny little like water drop noise. It's kind of loud. So this is someone moving through the labeling mission. Here we're in Oradell, New Jersey, and they're moving down the street and kind of moving back and forth that panorama to see if there's anything they need to be labeling. Lots of missing sidewalk on the other side. The sidewalk that does exist has some issues, some tile uplifts, some cracks. So the person's placing the label, adding a severity rating and any relevant tags that might be helpful when we review the data later on. Let's see, can I move to the next slide? There we go. So within the tool itself, there's a lot of built-in data analysis that's helpful as well. If additionally, you can download the data through Open API, but if you wanted to just get a general bird's eye view, this is a live label map of the labels that have been placed, some of the areas we worked throughout the Chicago region. And you can see on the left, there's a legend, and you can sort based off of label type, severity, whether or not the label's been validated. So some nice like in-house analysis and visualization that comes with the tool that is pretty much updated live as the labeling takes place. And then this is an example of a map that was created by our partners in Oradell, New Jersey, with the data that they downloaded from the site itself. So there's some customization involved as well if you wanted to download and make your own maps, own visuals, own analysis. And some brief case studies of how the tool's been used with some of our partners, because we're working not just nationally, but also internationally. We're doing some cool work in Mexico City and Taipei and Amsterdam. And this is a project that we worked on with some folks in Oradell, New Jersey. Some Girl Scouts reached out to us on a service learning project, and working with them this past year, held a couple of mapathon events where they looked at Oradell, and that's that video that I showed earlier. That's some of the labeling that they did, and did some validations, and are working this past couple of months to present their findings to City Council to hopefully have them, get an understanding of what those current conditions look like, and maybe think about having a more in-depth on-the-ground audit to address some of those connectivity and safety issues. Another example, we worked in Newburgh, Oregon, where it was less of like a small group effort and more so the Public Works Department placed the link to Project Sidewalk on their website and had community members go through some training and provide labels. And from that, the city got a better sense of what their current conditions looked like and were able to establish a new sidewalk renovation program. So a couple different ways the tool can be used, but pretty flexible. And we're really open to figuring out what works best for municipalities. And so next steps is I encourage folks to explore the tool. Again, I'll provide some links in the chat after this. And we'd love to kind of connect with folks one-on-one to get a better understanding of maybe what works best for them for implementation. You know, every municipality is different. Everyone's pool of resources is different. But ideally, even if this is like the first step to getting an understanding of what those conditions look like, or it's a way to get like broad strokes understanding and maybe priority areas to prepare for maybe a more in-depth on the ground audit, all to support ADA transition planning, but also the other planning that goes along with making sidewalks more safe and accessible for folks. So I'm going to provide all this information in the chat as well for my contact information, and happy to take any questions. I know I moved pretty quickly. None of there's any questions in the chat, but yeah, happy to answer any questions now or later as well about the tool itself and our work.
That was terrific. Thank you so much, Devin. I had a vague understanding of what this was about, but it's really a robust tool. I'm sorry, we're going to move along on questions. I don't see any in the chat, but please do pose a question in the chat. Devin, I hope you can stick with us for the conversation. We're trying to save some time at the end for a dialogue. And also, we've got a great related topic here on the STAR program, which is Safe Travel for All roadmap. Victoria Barrett will be joining us, Senior Transportation Planner from CMAP. She works to address multimodal travel safety in the Chicago region through policy design, education, and collaboration. She was an active member of her own municipality's climate working group in Evanston and helped write the city's climate and action plan. I'm assuming that would also be the transportation component of it. She has a master's both in urban planning and a bachelor's in environmental design and architecture, both from University of Colorado. I don't have any fun or funny facts on her. I'm going to let Victoria poke fun at herself. If those of you who are new, this is usually Mayor Burns' job. He does a much better job at being silly than I do, but happy to turn it over to you, Victoria. Is she here yet? Oops. She is not here.
I am. I'm sorry. I'm
Oh,
here. I couldn't unmute because I started my slideshow too soon, so I apologize.
Oh, okay. I know you had the other
I
meeting. All right.
Sorry, I'm actually pretty loaded here. Okay, I'm preloaded with my slides. Can you all see my slides here? Let me get my right view. I also was unable to be here for the tech check, which is becoming glaringly obvious right now. All right, so are you all seeing my my primary slides?
Yes, but it's not in presenter view.
How about now?
Yep, that looks good.
Okay, thank you so much. I apologize for that. All right, good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be here presenting on CMAP's safety work. We call our safety program STAR, which is the Safe Travel for All roadmap, which launched almost a year ago. It kind of built on some previous versions of safety programs, and I'll talk a little bit more about the development of our safety program as we go forward. STAR is a 5-year program of work here at CMAP. It's an effort to improve traffic safety in the region through innovative data analysis, compelling policy development, local collaboration on planning projects, and project implementation, and I'll also add convening with local partners on safety. It's multidimensional, and it's a robust program and very ambitious in what we hope to accomplish in the coming years, which I'm going to talk about today. I never talk about our safety program without starting with the very alarming data that we have in traffic safety today. We are in a traffic safety crisis in our country. This is a chart that shows national fatalities by year, and the last year on the right is 2021. The 2022 data is not quite available, but is expected to be about the same as 2021. 42,900 people lost their lives on our roads in America in 2021. That's the equivalent of a Boeing 777 crashing every week for a year, leaving no survivors. You can imagine the public outcry that would happen if that were to occur, and yet we've grown to accept roadway fatalities as just something that happens. You may have heard of Vision Zero programs that are kind of reclaiming this idea that we do not need to accept traffic fatalities as part of our travel system on a daily basis, and we need to work harder to improve it, which is part of why CMAP is involved here. This is traffic fatalities in our region, in the CMAP region. The blue line is our annual fatalities. I failed to mention this in the earlier one. The blue line is the annual fatalities, and the green line is the 5-year average, which is a slightly better representation of long-term trends. So we see 5-year averages increasing starting in about 2014, 2015 in our region, which is about the same for the United States and the state, I'll also mention. The red line on this graph is CMAP's onto 2050 Vision Zero goal, which is to eliminate traffic fatalities in our region by 2050. You can see these lines diverging, indicating that not only are we not making progress towards our Vision Zero goal, but we are seeing an increase in traffic fatalities. We are also seeing an increase in the number of bicyclist and pedestrian fatalities in our total traffic fatalities. So these numbers are lower generally just because of the volumes of travel by these modes, but they are increasing and fairly consistently. These are an important part of CMAP's mission. Protecting vulnerable roadway users is a really important part of our mission, not only because these are healthy modes of travel, climate-friendly modes of travel, they're also affordable modes of travel. And for many people in our region who choose not to drive or cannot afford to drive, these are the only modes of travel that they have, maybe when they're accessing transit, and is a key part of our safety work here at CMAP. Traffic safety is also an equity issue. We see Black residents in our region and multiple race residents in our region overrepresented in traffic fatalities. There are a number of theories as to why this might be true. One could be the story of the mode of travel that people use. There may be more people accessing transit or using walking and bicycling as primary modes of travel among these populations. It may also be an indicator of the types of infrastructure that are in the communities of color in our region. This is a story that's kind of got a groundswell of interest in the safety space right now, kind of identifying where are our most dangerous roads in our cities and regions. And there is a lot of evidence to suggest that they are in neighborhoods that are higher populations of color and lower socioeconomic status. I'm going to talk a little bit about speeding, which has been our first effort at policy development at CMAP. Speeding is an epidemic. It's, nationally, it's responsible for at least a third of fatal and serious injury crashes. That's probably low. We think speeding is generally underreported on crash reports. But even in our region, we see a much higher number for speeding related crashes. The data show that 41% of our fatal and serious injury crashes have speeding or aggressive driving as a contributing factor. And we also made an effort to try to understand where crashes are occurring that are speeding related. So it's your instinct might be to think that the highways are the most dangerous roadways in our region. And a little bit of data analysis on our part revealed that the highest rate of fatal and serious injury crashes is actually on municipal roads. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the data behind this, but speeding, in some ways, our state and toll roads, the national highway system, are better designed to support speeding safely. But when speeding occurs on our local roads, it presents a particular threat. One of the ways that we found this to be true was by identifying the posted speed limit on the roadways where our fatal and serious crashes. And it turned out that for both vehicles and cyclists and pedestrians, 30 miles per hour posted speed limit were the roadways with the highest rate of speeding related crashes. Again, not what your instinct would tell you, but it is a signal to a couple things, which I'm going to talk about. Roadway design is one of them. What we need to be paying attention to in mixed mode environments. Again, these are not the roadways that are our biggest safety challenge in our region right now. It's roads that look more like this. Posted speed limit of 30 miles per hour, multiple types of travel happening on these roadways. It's where you see pedestrians and bicyclists and cars interacting. You see cars parking, so we have complex movements. We have many points of conflict at intersections between modes and movements. And when speeding occurs on these types of roads, it's particularly dangerous. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the case for managing speeds in urbanized areas right now. Traditionally in the United States, we have managed speeds through the use of police enforcement, but there's a lot of movement to suggest that we could do better by addressing speeding in multiple ways. I first want to talk about the threat of speed to pedestrians. It's also a threat to bicyclists. It's also a threat to vehicle drivers. But this graphic is very telling. A vehicle traveling at 20 miles per hour has a 10% chance of killing a pedestrian that it strikes. A vehicle traveling at 30 miles per hour has a 40% chance of killing the pedestrian that it strikes. And at 40 miles per hour, the fatality rate goes up to 80%. So pedestrians do not really have a chance with cars traveling at 40 miles per hour, a chance of survival. Another issue with speed is that it decreases your field of vision. So as your brain automatically kind of closes off the amount of information it can take in as you travel at higher speeds. You can see here on the left, the field of vision. When you're traveling at 15 miles per hour, you can see pedestrians and other vulnerable roadway users on the sides of the road. And your field of vision on the right at 30 to 40 miles per hour narrows. This means that you are literally unable to detect hazards in your field of vision. You do not see vulnerable roadway users on the side of the road that may be encroaching your travel path. So it really reduces your ability to take in information about your environment. Higher speeds also increase the distance required for a driver to stop a vehicle. This includes both the perception reaction time that I just described, when you're like taking in the information and you know you need to stop. And then depending on how fast you're traveling, it takes a longer distance for the brake to bring the vehicle to a stop. So you can see here on the left is miles per hour of travel, so speeds. And across here is the total distance required to stop. You can see at 30 miles per hour on this chart, a driver needs more than 100 feet to detect and react to bring a car to a stop after seeing a hazard. There's also a very important story to tell when it comes to the need for us to manage speeds today in the size and weight of our vehicle fleet today. This is a chart from the EPA that shows the different types of vehicles that are produced. So this is basically like market share. 1975 is on the left, 2020 is on the right. The light blue color here are sedans. So in 1975, sedans accounted for about 80% of our vehicle fleet. And trucks and pickups and SUVs and vans were less than 20%. And over time, you can see consumer demand and manufacturing trends have been to produce larger vehicles. And now we see that sedans represent just over 25, or it's about 25 or 27% of our total vehicle size, our total vehicle fleet. So we have much larger cars on the road than we used to. And that matters because larger cars are also heavier cars. And this also comes into play when we start talking about electric vehicles. I've been told, by my communications team to never show this chart because it's very wonky. But what I want to make the point that we actually, calculated the kinetic energy of heavier vehicles so that we could understand what the differences are. And we have thankfully summarized it in a much easier to digest graphic here. But you'll see a sedan traveling at 30 miles per hour produces the same amount of kinetic energy as an SUV traveling at 25 miles per hour, produces the same amount of kinetic energy as a pickup or a large truck at 20 miles per hour. So the speed limits that we created in our in our motor vehicle code in the 70s and even before that were judging the safe speeds for sedans. And today we are not driving those cars. A majority of us are driving cars that are much larger, and those cars are much less safe on our roadways in terms of crash risk. Vehicles are also
Victoria.
taller.
I'm sorry, can I give you a time check?
Yes, please.
Love the content, but if you could step it up a little bit, we've got a
Yes,
discussion planned.
I will. Cars are much taller today. The place in your body that a vehicle impacts you also plays a large role in the survivability of a crash. And finally, I just want to say that speed management makes a big difference in reducing the risks of fatal crashes. So this was a calculation done that basically just showed that even decreasing average speeds by 1 mile per hour. So all cars are just traveling 1 mile per hour slower. You can reduce the risk of a fatal crash by 17%. Okay, so I'm going to just talk quickly about some of the ideas that are coming forward with managing speeds using the safe system approach, which we can talk about more in discussion. But really the idea behind the safe system approach is addressing safety comprehensively by both talking about the users, the roads, the speeds, the vehicles, and our crash response, our post-crash care. So some of the emerging ideas in speed management policy, and this will be produced, this is kind of a sneak peek of a policy paper that CMAP's about to produce, is improving the design of our roadways to include more traffic calming elements and other features that tend to reduce operating speeds. They're called self-enforcing streets. Reducing speed limits in dense urban areas is another recommendation here. 30 miles per hour is a very dangerous speed limit where you have vulnerable roadway users crossing your the path of your vehicle, even if they're separated by signals. It is potentially too high in certain areas where we have active modes of transportation. We are going to improve and collect and provide data, improved data and information to our partners on speeding and safety. And we're also working with partners to create a traffic safety culture around what safe speeds are. Finally, we are talking about improving the equity and safety in our enforcement programs. There is a lot of evidence to suggest that enforcement has been used for reasons that aren't related to traffic safety, even when the motor vehicle code is invoked. And so we have some strategies to improve that, both in terms of the safety outcomes and the equity outcomes. I think I'm going to skip the data project, but I do want to, that was mentioned earlier, CMAP provides technical assistance. We're doing that on ADA transition plans and also on safety. And we're about to kick off 2 safety action plans. And then finally, I want to talk just very, very quickly about our Safe Streets and Roads for All program. CMAP was awarded a planning grant to address regional safety to the tune of $5 million. So we're very excited about this work. It's through the U.S. Department of Transportation's new Safe Streets and Roads for All program, which was part of the EJA, Infrastructure and Investment in Jobs Act. So we are going to kick off in the coming months a regionally focused safety action plan. It will be done at the county level, but it will be done across the region. And we are working now to procure those with some consultants. And yeah, I'm happy to take questions. We can talk more about Safe Streets and Roads for All in our discussion.
Thank you, Victoria. Bleak news, but really, really interesting and important work. And I know that's really resonating with our communities as well. And we may discuss some of that in the dialogue, but we wanted to save some time here. Maggie and Audrey have prepared some questions via Menti, and there's going to be some open-ended opportunities for dialogue as well. So Maggie Scott will be using Mentimeter, and if those of you haven't used Menti before, she did put a link in the chat, so it's a web-based platform for participating. And if you can see on that first slide, you could just put in your device if you wanted to, use a phone. If you're on desktop, just type in menti.com, and then you'll have a prompt to enter that code, which will get you directly into this room. And so this appears to be, have you done this before? This appears to be a test question here, and Maggie, I'll let you lead.
Okay, great. Thanks, Edith. So the first question we've got here, it looks like you all know what you're doing, but we're wondering what municipality do you serve? So see 16 responses. We'll go through these first few slides pretty quickly. And I think, so what we're trying to gather here today is we're trying to understand what's getting in the way, what are the barriers, what are concerns you're hearing related to walking, biking, transit. I'll give you all like another 30 seconds to get Menti up. And if you haven't used Menti before, you can go to menti.com, and then the code is 69834386, and the link is also in the chat, as Edith said. But we'll move on to the next question. So we're curious, what types of projects has your city or village implemented in the last 10 years related to walking, biking, transit? So there's a list of several different project types here. You can select multiple projects. So have you worked on sidewalks, crosswalks, sidewalks? Have you done any things related to biking, bike lanes, or even better, protect the bike lanes? Have you invested in shared use paths, trails? Have you tried to slow down traffic, either through narrowing a road, through traffic calming, like a pedestrian island or a ramp, a curb bump out? Have you actually reduced any speed limits? if you added bus shelters, any community engagement, education, planning projects related to walking, biking, transit, or maybe something else altogether, or maybe you haven't, your community hasn't implemented any type of projects like this. So to the best of your knowledge, so it looks like we've got a handful of communities actually making sidewalk improvements, which is great to see, as well as crosswalks and then shared use paths. So love to see those responses coming in. So I will move it to the next slide. And I think even if I move it to the next slide, you can keep answering the previous question. So we wanted to utilize the little traffic light in Menti. So this question kind of revolves around that type of question. But so true or false, my community prioritizes walking and biking investments. So false, it's kind of a non-starter. Stop, walking and biking is generally not prioritized. Maybe not sure. Or yes, true, walking and biking are prioritized. So actually seeing majority green light, which is great. But of course, we know even in communities where walking and biking are prioritized, there can still be challenges. Let's give you another couple seconds. And all right, next one. All right, so now just thinking about any type of pushback barriers you've seen in your community related to walking, biking, or transit. So are you getting, to what extent are you getting pushback? We're just wondering kind of the scale of the pushback. So on the left side, it's no to low pushback. You're able to get those projects through, propose them, build them, or on the right, very high pushback, whether that's coming from the community, from staff, from elected officials. There's some type of barrier, or just like capacity. There's some type of barrier getting in the way. So seeing right now, pedestrian transit projects are maybe progressing a little more without as much resistance, though I guess pedestrian and bicycle are kind of, well, they're pretty close, all of them, but bicycle projects seem to be are a little bit in the middle ground, some pushback that communities are experiencing. Right, and Bob, so yeah, and it could be pushback, maybe you could use a different word for that, just like barrier. And that could be you're having trouble moving things forward because of IDOT or some other policy or institution that is maybe slowing things down, getting in the way. All right, so let's go to the next slide. All right, so where's that pushback? Where have those barriers come from? If it's applicable to you, so whether is it the public or maybe some individuals? Is it elected officials, trustees, city council, your mayor, president? Is it staff, municipal staff, maybe public works, engineering, planning, who knows? County or MPO staff, state staff like IDOT, as Bob was mentioning, it looks like that's rising to the top, as well as some public pushback, followed by local staff. All right, be another couple seconds. Okay, so now this is, we're just curious about what are the concerns that you have been hearing, and what are the barriers, what are the common arguments that you've heard against walking and biking projects. And we know, like, just from working with so many communities in our region, I know Edith, Audrey, and I have all heard stories from from many of you, and we're really interested. We'd like to understand more about what are those barriers, what's getting in the way, so we can better support, perhaps create some resources, trainings, whatever it is, that can help put you all in a better position to improve walking, biking, or transit. So yeah, capacity for sure. Oh wow, okay. Not a priority. We often hear that, gotta fill in those potholes first. Oh, bad for the environment. Interesting. Maintenance. Yeah, that's like just being able to pay for maintenance. Unsafe. Okay. Angry. Just the cost, finding that money, difficulty finding grants. Too expensive. Trees will be cut. I do hear that occasionally. Great, this is really helpful. And I think we'll be asking other groups these types of questions as well, and try to get a good understanding of what is going on. Oh, parking, yes, absolutely. That is that can be a barrier. Grant competitiveness. Could give you a little bit more time. Oh, people saying, I won't use it. Yep. Path to nowhere. Too much signage. Interesting. All right, thank you all. This is good. Good information to have, and feel free to keep inputting thoughts and ideas. And all right, we'll go to the next one. So how have you, like, the concerns that you have heard, how have you responded? How have you dealt with some of those barriers that you were typing in? Has anything worked? Has anything helped you overcome one of those barriers? And what hasn't worked? And I know we only have 6 more minutes, so we might go through this question a little more quickly so we can get to some of the other questions. Provided education on benefits and grants available. Compromise. Yeah. I feel like a lot of you probably have some lessons learned from when things didn't go well. I know I remember talking to some planners in Evanston, and they had a bike lane project that was just a disaster, and it caused a huge community uproar. And then the next time they decided to build another bike lane project, they completely changed the way they engaged the public, and it made all the difference. And there was a lot of positive support. So I give you a couple more seconds. I know there's probably a lot to say here, and hopefully we can keep engaging with all of you to understand what has made a difference. Called our lobbyists and elected officials. Yes. Community survey to understand what the community wants, community meetings. Projects should be presented early, interactive. Yeah, great. These are really great thoughts. And of course, we'll share all of this with you all, because we know some of you, like you all have, this is like a brain trust of ideas. We're also curious just about messaging. What do you think could resonate in your community? Sometimes it's all about reframing the conversation, kind of talking about safety. That's often a universal, understood, like people want to see safer roads, as we heard from what Vicky shared. And what else do you think could make a difference, and maybe get more people on board for walking, biking, and transit? So definitely see safety here, economy. Let's fight climate change and health. We want to save money, slow down traffic, attract new residents, help our most vulnerable populations. Which when you do that, it helps everyone. All right, so it does seem like safety and economy are kind of coming out in front. And again, like some of you might know of Mark Fenton. He's this like national speaker and expert on walking, biking, transit, and health and planning. And he always says you can't lose if you focus on grandmas, babies, and puppies. So thinking about that safety angle. All right, we'll go to the next slide. We only have 2 more minutes. Okay, what messages have helped build more support for walking, biking? I'm actually gonna skip through this because there's another slide I really want to get to. Actually 2 more slides I want to get to. I want to understand if any of you have any tools, resources, other ideas that you think would help you be a better champion for walking, biking in your community. We would love to know, so that whether that's is it just having some talking points? So how can you speak about walking and biking or transit? Is it having some one-pagers with some facts and study information, statistics? Is it having a PowerPoint already built out for you that you can just share with your city council? Is it going through some trainings or bringing others through trainings? Is it getting involved in policy change? Okay, great. So Edith, there's one more, do I have time to go through one more
Yes,
slide?
you do.
Okay.
Anybody that needs to leave, we've lost a few folks already, but I think some people, if they can, will stay. And so feel free to to finish.
Okay, thank you.
And apologies to those of you if you have to cut out early. Thank you for being with us, but if you can stick around, please do.
Yeah, and appreciate all of your responses so far. It's very helpful, and welcome any other if you want to get in touch with me to share any thoughts you have. Always interested in understanding what you're all going through in your communities. So I'm going to skip this one. This is the one I just wanted to make sure to get to, because really curious about ways that your municipality would be willing to advocate for transportation, for better walking, biking, and transit policy at either the state or regional level. So I just want to read through these real quick. So these are different levels, because we realize that, some communities are willing to be like upfront, speaking out. Some want to help, but they're willing to do so more behind the scenes. So we want to understand. So one is, are you willing to submit an action alert? Sometimes we have action alerts about different policies that would go to an elected official. Is your municipality willing to do that? Not necessarily you as an individual. Would you be willing to sign on to a letter to IDOT, Illinois Department of Transportation, or the governor about maybe some barriers? Would you be willing to testify at a public hearing? We've had a few mayors and village or city trustees, city council members testify in the past, and that has made a huge difference. So we want to know if you're willing to do something like that. That helped us get $50 million in annual funding for walking, biking, and transit. Are you willing to fill out a witness slip? Often when we have bills at the state legislature, we need witness slips signed. And we've seen a number of municipalities do that. Are you willing? Is your municipality willing to do that? Will you call your state representative or senator? Like a lot of you have relationships, direct relationships with your senator or representative, and calling them can make a big difference in helping us advance a policy idea. And like one of the policies that recently passed was this truck turning radius bill, which is going to help us throughout the state. Municipalities now can design an intersection without making sure it can fit a supersized truck. Like you can decide like what that design can look like. You have more freedom now. So are you willing to host a meeting with the state legislature or state leader? Are you willing to work with your COG, perhaps your council of government, to advocate? Would you be willing to reach out to a CMAP board member? That's something that we might be looking to do in the future. There's a few things going on. There's a transit fiscal cliff where transit is going to be running out of funds in 2026. And so we really need to be working on some solutions, working with CMAP to figure this out. And like the concern is like if we don't have any more transit, like it's going to have a huge, very negative impact on our whole region. Are you willing to serve on a working group to improve state policy? Or maybe you're just willing to have a conversation with us, just a one-on-one conversation to so we can consult you, get your advice. Are you willing to apply for funding for ITEP, Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program for Safe Routes to School, to actually help implement improved walking, biking facilities in your community? And are you willing to share that active transportation plan that the state's working on with your community? So I appreciate all of your responses so far, and definitely might be reaching out to some of you as we start working on different policies. So with that, Audrey, I don't know if you wanted to say anything. I know we're over time now.
Only that I dropped our emails, Maggie's and my email, in the chat. So please reach out to us. If any of you have said that you're available to be consulted, it looks like 9 of you. Please give us reach out, and we'd love to have a body of folks that can provide information to us. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Great job with the presentations. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Devin. Thank you to those who volunteered to continue this conversation. Those of you who spoke up, please do comment on the plan and stay in touch on this topic. Cheryl dropped it into the chat. The next meeting is on our franchise agreement as a barrier to clean energy. We'll be following up with the conversations we've had at our Energy Academy about franchise cost agreements and alternative there. So that will be via Zoom, usual time, which is the third Tuesday in August, and it's on Zoom, and there's a registration link. So thank you all, especially for sticking with us a little over time.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Have a great day.